Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate, and I'm delighted to be joined by Lincoln City fan Jake Tonge. Jake, thanks so much for taking the time to join us this evening. Back-to-back defeats, bit of a setback, but an encouraging performance at Wrexham, albeit without reward.
Yeah, I actually think the last two performances have been quite encouraging, Gab, to be honest. You look back at Saturday against Wickham, I mean, you look at what they're in the middle of doing and you think, crikey, we played pretty well. We created chances. They had Franco Ravazzoli in goal, bail them out once or twice. We had chances that we should have scored, but then so did Wickham. So I think the right outcome came, but we were able to make chances, which was quite positive because I think back to a year ago, Gab, and we were talking about a Lincoln team that just couldn't create almost next to anything. And then Tuesday night, again, like we say, really positive. Probably, and I spoke to some Wrexham fans after the game, waiting to get out the car park, and they said, "You know, I wouldn't be. I think we got away with one there. We at least probably mostly what we should have done was drawn it. So, yeah, positive. Again, created loads of chances. It's just that difference between being a nearly team and being a playoff team in League One is a goal scorer. You look at all the teams at the top, predominantly got people that can put the ball in the back of the net on a consistent basis. You think, you've got Wickham with Kone, you've got Blues with Stansfield and May and Williamson and everybody else. You've got Wrexham with Paul Mullin, Stockport, Louis Barry. The list goes on. So,
Sure.
I think had we, and it's very easy to say of hindsight, if we had signed Joe Taylor or another striker in the summer, say let's say we signed Joe Taylor, I think last Tuesday night we'd have won, if that makes sense. Like the quality of chance that we made was a Joe. I have no doubt Joe Taylor would have put away.
Well, do you know what I'm so frustrated by, Jake? Is I've heard from Luton Town fans like Lewis Williams on his YouTube saying that Joe Taylor hasn't been starting for Luton because Rob Edwards doesn't like his work ethic. And it's like, how frustrating is that for Lincoln City? Like, you would absolutely kill to have somebody like Joe Taylor in your starting 11.
Well, do you know what? Lincoln fans are pretty much keeping an eye on Joe every time. Because at the end of that season, Gabby was like phenomenal last season. He scored 10 in 19, and I thought, right, he's going to go to Luton. Rob Edwards is going to absolutely love him.
Yeah,
and we're going to see like a player go and score maybe 10 goals as a third choice striker for Luton, but getting on regularly.
Yeah.
And he started the season coming off the bench, 10 minutes here or there, and then for some unbeknownst reason, just hasn't been able to get in. And I don't know why, because Luton have struggled for goals.
Yeah.
And Joe Taylor, I know he doesn't offer you the work rate, but he does offer you that natural finishing instinct. And I think you're a goal scorer at any level, Gab. You see goal scorers step up from the National League to League One and still find the net because it's the same job. You just got to try and work out your defenders a bit quicker. And to be honest, Joe Taylor was probably back end of last season a bottom half championship performance centre forward, and that's where Luton are now. So, but yes, it is frustrating to see someone not of Joe's talent not playing at all, because I could just think of so many games that we've played this season. If we had had Joe Taylor now, he would have it had just won us the game.
Jake, you've sometimes said to me in the past that you're actually happier this way with four good strikers in Ben House, Jove McCarmer, Freddie Draper, Bailey Cadamartri, all good strikers.
Yes.
Are you still feeling that way, or are you still feeling like now you would actually trade two of those good strikers in order to have one that's like, your killer, if you like?
I think you spoke to me at times where, look, our centre forwards, all of them, bar Ben House and Tyler Walker, who's injured, are young. You've got Rob Street, 22, Bailey Cadamartri, 19. You've got Jovan McCarmer, 20, and Freddie Draper, 20. So they're all really young, maybe bar Rob Street, who's got a bit of experience, but are all, them three particular
Street's
really
been around the block a few times.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you've got these players, with young players, we see it all the time. They have really high ceiling. They fluctuate their current ability. They can go 1 week to being amazing and unplayable to the next week being not useless, but useless. And there are chances in there so far this season, and again, it irked me on Tuesday night. Jovan Makama should have scored twice. He's had chances so far this season. I know you've watched the highlights and messaged me and gone, how has he not scored? He's done everything to get in the right position. He's done everything to get there, just the final action. And I think you get that with young players. So
Sure.
I think maybe loans for one or two of them. I'd maybe be looking at certainly loaning out Jovan. I know he's been starting a
Interesting.
lot.
Okay, so because you were very big on like talking to the lads on the podcast, like you're very big on Jove McCarmer, and
I still think I will
yeah,
be in
yeah,
years to come. He's only 20,
cool.
and he's played 70 games for the first team, which is some of that's been forced, but it's still a pretty good number of games to have played in League One. He just hasn't been able to find the net consistently because whether we've had Ben House or Bailey Cadamartra or Joe Taylor in front of him, and now he's got to that. Now he's barged them all out the way like he does with defenders. It's just that final bit he's got to get better at, and ultimately it hasn't, and it's cost us points. And more Lincoln fans are going, well, he just needs to go and score. Like, I think he'd be able to do it in League Two, Gab. I think he'd be able to go and maybe score in the second half of the season if we send him out to a team in the maybe in the mid-table or toward maybe he could get himself a top half League Two loan move. We might see Jovan scoring regularly, and that might give him the encouragement to come back to Lincoln and score. But you're asking me, would I trade our strikers for Joe Taylor? Absolutely, yes. I want Joe Taylor. I'm desperate for Joe Taylor. It has to be Joe Taylor, or I'm willing to compromise, and I'm willing to take Nathan Lowe from Stoke. He would be just as good. But a striker like that.
I'll tell you what, you can take Nathan Lowe from Stoke, and then Walsall can have Joe for the Karma.
Yeah. Do you know what? or we can just give them Freddie Draper back because we know how much they love Freddie Draper.
Yes, that's true.
Then we all end up happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a solution for everyone. So where am I? So who have been the players, Jake? Because we've waxed lyrical about Ethan Arahan plenty of times. I'm sure we'll come on to do that again. But who have been the players that maybe have caught you out a little bit or surprised you a bit this season? I imagine Tendai Darikwa would be one of them.
3-2 now, Gab. I know it was an own goal, but it's still a goal, isn't it? Yeah, Tendai massively, and I was telling you this summer that he was going to be phenomenal for us, just because he's our only player over the age of 30, and there's a lot of onus. And Lincoln have done this before, where they've put a lot of responsibility on a player, and then they've gone on to perform massively over expectations. My best case scenario would be George Grant. If you can remember George Grant in the COVID season behind closed doors, George Grant was given the armband when Liam Bridcut wasn't playing, and George Grant was probably equally as good as Brennan Johnson and Morgan Rogers was towards the back end of that season.
It was weird though, because I'm sure George Grant had a period, because he had a great half season at Notts County. I think it was the 17-18 season. And then like the 18-19 season, I seem to think
Mansfield, wasn't he?
Yeah, maybe he might have gone to Mansfield, but I think he had definitely struggled between that season with Lincoln and his time at Notts County. I think he went to Mansfield and didn't do so well, and then maybe one or two other moves that didn't quite go to plan. And then he seemed to kind of come back into the equation for your
lot. And Mike Appleton gave him a lot of responsibility. He gave him the armband. He gave him a new contract. And Tendai, we've seen that as well in terms of his responsibility around the training ground is massive because he's been there and done it, Gab. He's played in the top flight, and I can tell. Sometimes you can tell when a player's played at that top level, and just his touch, his fitness for a 32-year-old is genuinely like it's a joke. If you're asking me now, Lincoln Player of the Season, Tendai Darikwa was number one, and I didn't think we could. This sounds really bad. I love Lasse Sorensen, Gab. I absolutely adore him, and I really hope that it works for him at Huddersfield. And I know it's not because he's injured at the minute, but I didn't think we'd be able to find an upgrade, and I think we have an upgrade for our team in Tendai Darikwa, which is mental to say. Yeah, that's how impressive. And I think if you asked a lot of Lincoln fans, and I'm sure you speak to many of us, Tendai has been better in this team than Lasse was in the last team in last season. Just his influence, his flexibility. Tendai can drop in as a third centre back or as a centre back in a two, play right back and play right wing back. I think he's even played right on the top line as a right winger when we're chasing games. So, and the bloke can finish. The bloke can put it, and we've seen it. I don't know if you've seen Ben House's goal. I think it was against Stockport when Corey O'Donnell gives him the ball. It's a lovely second time ball in, pinpoint to the back post. He's got that ability to cross. He can score. I know he scored in his own net on Tuesday, but scoring twice against Wickham, who are a very good side defensively. Scored 2 really good goals with the second one, Gab. I don't know if you've seen it on the Sky Bet highlights. It was genuinely sensational. So yeah, Tendai's one, and I will wax lyrical about him. But one that's really surprised me, Gab, and one that perhaps we sort of looked at over the summer and went, he doesn't quite fit in with everything else that they've done. Dom Jeffries. I've been really impressed with Dom. He's probably one of my favourites at the moment. He's obviously, when we signed him, we signed him as a midfielder, and for Gillingham, he played like a mix of central midfield and left-sided midfield, and we didn't really play with wide midfielders, so it was a little bit curious as to see what was going to happen. But it's very clear to me that Lincoln are trying. They've got a blueprint of what they've done with Lass, and they're going to try and do it with Dom. And to be honest, I think it's worked pretty well. He's been really solid and steady at left back. He's set up the goal against Peterborough, really, energetic, same as Lass Sorensen, really good technically because he's been playing in midfield. He's come through at Brentford. He's got that technical ability. So Dom Jeffries is another one that's really surprised me.
It's funny, isn't it? Like talking about because if you'd have said to me, Jake, before going back in the summer, your wing backs this season are going to be Tendai Darikwa and Dom Jeffries. I wouldn't be like super excited about Lincoln City, and actually, in terms of the recruitment, it's not like. I think I had to, when I put Lincoln City in my top 6 before the season, it was kind of in spite of my initial on paper feelings about the signings, because I had so much faith in the recruitment processes and that the planning was smart, like you've talked about, that it would kind of come to fruition, that there's method in the madness almost, without being sort of too disrespectful. But it's like, it's like you kind of trust that there's a process there, even if you can't quite see it from the outside. And I guess that's kind of how it's panned out.
I think it's a lot to do with the manager as well and his way to coach players. And when Michael came in, you look at the squad and how they were performing under Kennedy for that first sort of 8-10 games that he had up to October, and then you look at the same players like 6 or 7 months later, and like they come on leaps and bounds, and that tells you a lot about the coach, I think. And these players that we signed in the summer, well, on paper they don't look great, but they're working with Michael Skibala every day, who we know is a naturally a very gifted coach. We've seen what he's done before with young players who are playing in the Premier League and winning trophies, on the international scene as well. So we know, and also I think a massive part of it as well, Gab, that will go under the radar. I think Chris Cohen's been absolutely massive for us at the minute. He came in as a coach during the interim period under Tom Shaw, but then worked with Michael for the rest of last season, but then went and joined Stoke in the summer, which I can completely understand. It would have been a better contract. It would have been a higher salary and a higher level. Completely understand that. But he's come back, and I think he has the experience. He's played a good level of football. He's been a young player. He's been there, and he's still recently enough retired to be one of the lads, one of the more experienced players, if you will, to be around the group. And I think having someone like that who's really progressive in their coaching as well, because we've seen him at Luton, we've seen him at Southampton. He followed Nathan Jones, and then he ended up at Stoke. He's a really good young coach. So I think he's been massively helped as well, helped with Michael. And I think the fact that Lincoln just give these players time, like they don't, when you sometimes you have a club in League One where they sign a player and there's so much pressure on them all of a sudden when the expectation is so high. Like maybe one example that really suits to mind, me and Nappers have spoken about this before, but you take John Marquis at Portsmouth. Like they signed him for a big fee. yes, he scored the goals, but there was loads of pressure on him to score the goals to get Pompey promoted. And ultimately, a lot of Pompey fans will say, "Oh, John
Well,
Marquis was a
well,
failure."
well, Kenny Jackett used him as a number 10 as well, didn't
Well,
he?
exactly. So like, a
Yeah.
lot of Pompey fans, if you look at it, will say, "John Marquis, what a waste of money. We spent money on him and he was no good." Whereas
Mm.
he came to Lincoln, and the expectations are different, and all of a sudden, Lincoln fans will talk to you really fondly about John Marquis because he tried, he worked hard, he scored a couple of goals, he missed some, he did miss a couple of chances, but he tried. And I think the expectation levels that's is different. And I think Lincoln fans give these players a bit more time than,
Yeah.
say, fans of a Barnsley or a Birmingham or a Wrexham or whatever.
Sure. Hang on. Which era is was John Marquis playing for Lincoln City?
21-22.
Oh, did you
He
say?
scored a load of goals. Well, he scored. I want to say he scored 4 or 5 goals and kept us in the league because we were rubbish that season.
Oh, okay.
We signed him in January, if you can
Oh,
remember.
right. Okay. Do you know what? That's gone completely over my head. That I've completely forgot that John Marquis
You
played
must
for.
have think, why is he going on about John Marquis? Like,
I,
what's it like?
yeah. Anyway. Okay. Right. So that happened. I do remember Brooke Norton Cuffy from that season because
Oh,
you
yes.
tweeted me about him like every week, didn't
Oh,
you?
yeah.
So
The
that was
MC.
that was the one that I remembered. So where was I? So how's Lewis Montsma been getting on in that right centre back spot?
Yeah, good. I spoke to Lewis on Tuesday because he wasn't in the squad, but he came and sat with the supporters, and I think it's very obvious that the club are worried about his past with his injuries, and they're not reluctant to give him Saturday, Tuesday just yet,
Hmm.
despite people saying that they think he's probably ready because he's played quite a bit of football over the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks. But when he has played, Gab, again, I've been really impressed. That natural ball playing ability is something that has massively suited us. It means that we can play aimed channel balls into behind centre halves and fullbacks to try and
Hmm.
get up the pitch, and that's what a Michael Scabala team likes to do: get up the pitch pretty quickly
Hmm.
and then just have organised chaos up the top end of the pitch. So Lewis is really good with that, but then you've got to be, again, like the club, like I said, the club have got to be really careful because he's done back-to-back ACLs. Like there was a moment in time, I think it was at Exeter, where he lunged for the ball and you could just feel in that terrace behind the goal, you could just feel all the Lincoln fans going, oh my God, what's going to happen
Yeah.
here? And that's what you don't want to play with that. So I think
Is there a space for a lone centre half from the Premier League club in January?
I think potentially.
Yeah.
Lewis is only under contract until January.
Really? That's a weird one.
Yeah.
How's
Okay.
that work?
So he did his ACL the first time, and he would have been out of contract in that summer.
Right.
But the club offered him a new deal, 2-year deal, because they offered him a deal because of. I know you remember this, Gab. The season behind closed doors, Lewis Montsma was unplayable, like
Yeah. Yeah.
genuinely
Of
in
course, yeah.
League One, like unbelievable. And the club thought, well, we know he can be, we know he's got that in him, so
Mm.
we'll give him a contract because we know that when he comes back, it might take him a while, but we know what's there. We want to retain it. So when he did it the second time, we thought, well, he's still under contract, and he ran out of contract at the back end of last year. But again, we know how good he can be.
Mm.
And also, Lincoln are a club that put people first rather than the player.
Sure.
So they want to make sure, you know what, we still want to be well spoken about within player circles. So if we look after Lewis,
Mm.
it shows other players that we look after them, and even if they've got really bad injuries, they can still come here and we'll look after them. Because sometimes you get players that are too good for the level but are just constantly injured, and they're
Yeah.
just sort of just bashed because they're just. Whereas we look after them, and then
Yeah.
in the summer, obviously he came back and he was invited back for pre-season training, and we started to see Lewis start to come back. Like in Spain, he was really good. He was playing some really good passes in pre-season and the training drills. So yeah, I think we offered him a contract because then he'd have like a 6-month period to prove himself that he could play a bit of football and get himself back to fitness.
So surely he'd get a deal until the
I
end of
would,
the season
I
then.
imagine, at least until the end of this season.
Yeah.
What I imagine might happen is we might offer him a 18-month contract just to in
Yeah,
case that
or
if
maybe
he
6 months with a year option or something along
yeah,
those
just in
lines.
case he does really well in the next 6 months, and then
Yeah,
because we don't want him to do really really well, come back and play a lot of football, and then all of a sudden go for free in next month, or we don't want him to go
that's
for
the
free.
trade-off, though, isn't it, Jake? That's the kind of the risk and reward that Lincoln City have got to balance, isn't it?
Yeah, and Jez George, like you rightly say, Gab is one of the best in looking after the best interests of the club. So
Yeah,
whatever happens with Lewis, but I imagine there will be room for a centre back. I know Adam Jackson, he's not far from coming back, but his sort of whole spell with Lincoln's been on off with injuries. Yes, he's been really solid and is really good when you need to defend.
I think
We,
Pordy's clear of him personally. Well,
I
I definitely think Pordy starts in the middle of a back three, and I
oh
think
yeah,
probably want someone else on the right.
Yeah, I think so. And Sean has that left-sided centre back spot completely like locked down.
Yeah.
But what's been really interesting, Gav, is we've gone to a back four quite a lot this season.
Well, that doesn't surprise me actually, Jake, because even if you look at the configuration of the 11 as a 3-5-2 or 3-4-1-2 or whatever,
Mhm.
it does lend itself narrowly to flipping to a 4 in game because you
Yeah.
got Dariqua right wing back, can easily fill in at right back. Sean Rowan, left centre back, can easily slot into left back.
Mhm.
Dylan Duffy, say, can easily on the left, can easily play further up.
Yeah.
So it can very quickly sort of become a nice, smoother back four kind of formation. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and it's been quite effective because in games sometimes when you need the extra man further up the pitch, we've been able to create goal scoring opportunities. One game that sticks in my head was Northampton at home,
Mhm.
where Tyler Roberts gets sent off. They then go 10 men pretty much behind the ball, but we shift it to a back four, and then all of a sudden you bring Eric Ring on as the extra attacker, goes and scores the winning goal, and therefore it looks like it's worked, and it has done it on numerous times this year. So yeah, the flexibility. I would like maybe another right-sided centre back. Yeah, I think just to offer a bit of competition for Lewis. Like if we're not going to play him Saturday, Tuesday, we've had international games called off, so there will be
Yeah.
Tuesdays towards the back end of the year. So
Because
probably
that's
looking
the other
for
thing, Jake. Like Lewis Monster is monster. Lewis,
he
I
is a
mean,
monster.
he
He
is a
is.
monster at times. Lewis Montsma is just his vision is incredible. I think you
Mhm,
want to have something similar to come in when he's not playing or if he gets
mhm,
injured, because your other options are Adam Jackson, who you've mentioned, or Tom Hamer, who again he'll be pretty good in 1v1s, having been a fullback by trade. He's not going to have the same passing range, is he? So
mhm.
yeah, I think have a centre half who could maybe fill in for Montsma, maybe fill in for Rowan if he absolutely needs to, like unexpectedly. I think that could be a smart move.
Yeah, certainly. So I think we need a bit of depth in there. Tom Hamer's out injured at the minute. He had surgery a couple of weeks ago, so he'll probably be 2025 before we get him back.
Right.
So yeah, I think a centre back. We have got Saxon early, sort of just sitting around doing not a lot, and I know he plays on the left hand side, but I
Mm.
think I wanted to raise this with you. I think Sean Rowan, as much as Lincoln fans will say, Sean Rowan's been brilliant for us. 21 to have played, 110 games in our first team now, whatever it is, great achievement, whatever. I think there's a little bit of complacency with Sean. He knows he's the only left-sided centre back at the club, and therefore some performances would maybe your way you'd go. Do you know what? Sean probably shouldn't be playing the next game, but because he's the only left-footed centre back, he knows he's going to get played,
Yeah,
and that's a really dangerous trait because you don't want Sean slipping off his standards because we know how good he can be. So I would, and I've said this to many people. We've got the FA Cup on Saturday. I would give Saxon early a try at left centre back of a back
interesting.
three.
Yeah.
I know he's predominantly a left wing back or a left or a left.
Yeah, well, I think it's very different, isn't it, Jake? Playing left wing back under Steve Evans for Stevenage to play. I think if you sort of apply that to a Michael Skibala side, it probably does lend itself his skill set more to left centre back in a Skabala team because it's
Yeah.
obviously a different approach. So yeah, I think he can bring those defensive qualities. I think for me with Saxon early, he did well in League Two, right? And I feel like he had such a good half season for Stevenage that he almost pitched himself too high, and then ended up going to Plymouth Argyle. Might have got injured, but didn't really play at that sort of higher levels. And he's kind of lost a bit of momentum in his career. So yeah, that's unfortunate for him. But hopefully he can rediscover that at Lincoln City and provide that competition for Sean Rowan.
Yeah, I think he can do, but obviously he's not played a lot of games. Therefore, I think Plymouth Argyle will probably want to recall him in January because he's only played in the Virtue Trophy a handful of times, not really got on in the league because the way Michael plays the left wing back, he's not going to play left wing back because we've got Rico, you've got Dom, and now you've got Eric and Dylan Duffy as well. And it's very clear. It's very clear that left wing back slot is offensive. It's very attacking, and they're very much playing on the top line because, like I've said to you before, Lincoln like to, when they play this weird about the shift, they rotate sort of clockwise, and you've got the right wing back coming around to play right back. The left centre half goes and plays left back, and then you've got the winger sort of playing as like a rogue figure out on the left, really high and wide. But then once he gets beat, you've still got the cover of the centre back, a central midfielder, and also the two sort of left-sided defenders in the back four. So it wouldn't really suit Saxon, I don't think, to go and play that left wing back role. Whereas you've got Rico Hackett, who's a winger, Eric Ring, who's a winger. It's more inclined to their skill set.
More of a natural fit, yeah. So who's the best midfield? What's the best midfield pick configuration around Ethan Arahan for Lincoln at the moment?
Difficult, really difficult because they're good. They all bring something completely different. For me, any good Lincoln City midfield needs to have a forward-thinking midfielder in, and that is Jack Moylan. He's ever since he's come into the team, Gab, I've been so impressed with Jack Moylan. In terms of he feels a little bit like Teddy Bishop, just without the injury crisis all the time. Like he's so agile. He can get himself into shooting areas. We saw against Wrexham, he got into shooting areas. He scored lots of goals for Lincoln from a really advanced 8 point of view. So Jack Moylan for me is in there. Although there is an argument at the minute amongst some supporters that Jack Moylan's very good at coming off the bench when he's coming up against tired legs.
Sometimes he always runs at people, doesn't he, Jack Moylan?
And this is his really good trait that we saw at Shelbourne, running at defenders. He completely terrifies them. He gets them, running towards their own goal, and defenders we know don't like that. But when he starts, he sometimes struggles to make the same impact because everyone's, the first sort of 10, 15 minutes, everyone's switched on. Everyone knows what Jack Moylan's going to do. Whereas if you've been playing for an hour and you see Jack Moylan come on, you've maybe forgotten about him from what your manager said in the week and gone, oh, it'll be fine, I'll just continue to play my normal game. And then you realise, okay, hold on, he's gone past me and they've scored. So Jack Moylan for me, and maybe when Tom Bayliss gets back, I think you start with Tom Bayliss and then bring Jack Moylan off the bench.
Okay. So instead of Moylan, right? Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, Tom Bayliss is much more effective from set pieces. So we like to start games really quickly and really fast, and that involves getting a lot of set pieces. And Tom Bayliss's delivery so far of what we've seen has been exemplary. He got 2 assists on the first day. Got the assist for the late equaliser down at Blackpool. So I would start Tom Bayliss for that set piece ability, and also Tom Bayliss is really good from the start. Like he's so good at finding those eye of a needle balls through a defense, which is what he's really good at. And then it's a one of two again, and it's really difficult because you've got Conor McGrandles and you've got Ethan Hamilton. Now, if I said to you, you'd probably start Ethan Hamilton based on name and reputation. Whereas Conor McGrandles in a Lincoln shirt is like Patrick Vieira. It's unbelievable. He's just phenomenal. I don't know what it is. I know it worked from a little bit at Cambridge, but I was so surprised when he went to Charlton and Charlton fans are going, well, he's absolutely rubbish. Like Conor McGrandles, if you can remember him, Gav, again in that COVID season, like those as an 8, he was unbelievable. Those
Yeah,
third
he
man
made lots
runs.
of. He scored a goal at Gillingham, didn't he? In
Mm-hmm.
that season, and made lots of good runs forward,
Yeah,
didn't he?
and he's really good. And what we've often done with Connor is we often play Connor when there's like a really good midfielder in the opposition, and we give him the job to man mark a little bit. So
Mm.
I think that, I mean, I know they're games that we've lost, but example, we played Barnsley. I think we stuck him on Luke O'Connell, and Luke O'Connell was almost ineffective that game. You've
Yeah.
got when we played Blackpool, he stuck him on Lee Evans. I know he went off at half time, but he was able to control Lee Evans pretty much that first half.
It's
Paking a
very
water.
hard to control Lee Evans as well. He's such an energetic comedian.
Well, this is it, and why I think we came unstuck against Birmingham is because we asked him to mark 2 midfielders in Paik and Awata, and you're going to get nowhere near them, whoever you are in this league. So
no, I remember Conor McGrath as much as I remember him as an 8 for your lot in that playoff final season. I also remember him a few years before that playing for MK Dons, where he did a really solid job as part of a double pivot and looked really intelligent, kind of mopping things up. So I could imagine him doing either job, that kind of man marking job, or something slightly further forward. And again, we've talked about flexibility in terms of defensive shape, haven't we, in terms of flipping between a 3 and a 4. I think McGrandles gives you flexibility in midfield because of his ability to just do different jobs and adapt to the needs of different games or within games.
Yeah, and whilst Ethan was injured, Connor was playing as the 6, and to be honest, I mean, you notice a difference because you miss a player like Ethan, but he still does a competent enough job, if that makes sense. Like it's not such a massive drop off that people thought. Like, so he's played a few roles. So, and that sounds really harsh on Ethan Hamilton, because Ethan Hamilton, until he got injured last year, was up there for probably player of the season with a lot of fans.
Well, I think unlike McGrandles, who I think can play equally well as a 6 or an 8, I think Ethan Hamilton is more of an 8 who can play as a 6, but he's definitely better as an 8.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think my issue at the minute, if you play Hamilton and Irahan, they're both left-footed, and it can really disjoint the balance of the team. If you have, I think we've said this on numerous occasions to each other, Gav. If you've got too many left-footers or too many right-footers, you become a bit too predictable. And sometimes when they both wanted to get clearly go on the left foot, I think you can see that. So
it's the Ethan compound, so they need to be kind of. You maybe need. So I'm trying to make some sort of connection between left footers and right. I don't know where. So there's the pieces there. Someone needs to.
Yeah, and Ethan offers you that different threat, doesn't he? Because outside the box, his left foot is like a traction engine, and he can really hit them. So, I mean, I'm delighted with our midfield options. I am, and we've got. This is an area where we've got really good depth. So, if we did, like, we have missed Ethan, but we were able to adequately replace with Conor McGrandles dropping down, and then you bring Ethan into the start, Hamilton into the starting 11. Whereas, if you're missing McGrandles, you just play Hamilton, or Bayliss is injured, so Jack Moylan's or JJ McKiernan comes in. JJ McKiernan.
We've not mentioned him yet, have we? JJ McKiernan.
Yeah, no, he's found. I think he's found life difficult since coming in. But
he was a key man at Morecambe in the first half of last season, whereas he isn't going to be a key man at Lincoln, is he?
No, and he's 22 on a 4-year contract. It's clear that the club have got a lot of faith in his potential. So I think it might be maybe a year's time that we start seeing the best.
What he needs, Jake, is you to cash in on Moylan or Bayliss to not become. He needs a bit of a gap opening for him. I think if you've got 2 attacking midfielders ahead of him in the pecking order, that's obviously going to make it harder for him to continue to progress.
Yeah, and to be honest, I could probably see somebody coming in for Jack Moylan at the end of this season, because he's been really impressive. Whether that's League One or whether that's the chat, I don't know.
No, but I think the way you've designed your model, you've kind of got to trust the players that you've got in reserve to make that step up. Because that's kind of, I think a 4-year contract for JJ McKiernan is a massive long-term investment. So then you've got to back that player to step up when the opening appears, because otherwise the model falls down and you lose the value in the asset.
Yeah, and I think JJ from cameos that he's come off the bench has been really impressive. He's sort of similar to Jack Moylan. He likes picking the ball up and running at players. I've seen that numerous occasions. He came on and changed the game away at Stevenage, winning a penalty. Blackpool, when he sort of played on the left-hand side of a front three, really direct, really good at dribbling at the fullback, and they didn't want to live with him. And then he played against Man City's kids. I know it's the kids of Man City, but these are some of the best under 20 players in the world.
Sure.
And he looked phenomenal. So yeah, I think his time will come in a Lincolnshire. Absolutely. Just got to be a bit more patient. Like I say, he's on a 4-year deal, so the club have clearly got a plan for him to come in to the team in the next 12 to 18 months permanently. But we'll see how he goes. But yeah, someone that, again, I'm very excited about because I've liked what I've seen so far.
Absolutely. How confident are you that you're going to keep hold of Michael Skubala for the medium-term future?
Very, very confident. Signed a new deal at the start of the season, new 4-year deal. So Michael is very... I know, and Championship clubs would be stupid not to take note. Absolutely. Michael is very much... I think Michael doesn't want to just take the first move. He wants to make sure that he takes the right move. It's not just the first one that comes up. So Coventry was one that I was actually really scared about because they're so... I think Michael would be really good at Coventry. I think he would... Oh, bless you, Gab.
Thank you.
I think Michael would have been a really good fit stylistically and as a coach wanting to step up the gears. So I was worried about the Coventry job. The whole job's just come up. Not particularly worried about the whole job. I think they'll probably want someone a bit with Championship.
I'm not sure Skubala will appeal to Hull, and I'm not sure Hull will appeal to Skubala.
Yeah. So I think maybe if you're looking at, I don't know, for example, let's say in a really weird world, Leicester go and poach Michael Carrick or something. I know they're going to go for Van Nistelrooy, but Middlesbrough would scare me, if that makes sense. Like a club of that stature who's clear and ambitious that they've got a plan to get into the Premier League. Or if the Leeds job comes up and it plays on his heartstrings and he wants to go back, that would concern me. But you'd imagine they'll probably be in the Premier League next year and wouldn't be looking at a manager like Michael. So I'm very confident of keeping Michael. Like I say, he's on a long-term contract. He's very much bought into the club. I think he wants to be very successful at Lincoln. I think he wants to be the guy that takes us that next step that we've not been up in 60 years. I think he's got a plan. I think he works really well with the people above him in the hierarchy. So I've got no concerns over losing Michael unless a really good Championship job comes available. But then, even then, say the Middlesbrough job becomes available, I don't think Michael's the first name on the list. So, be interesting to see.
Certainly will. Top 6 for Lincoln City then, Jake? Yes or no?
I'm 50-50 at the minute. I'm really 50-50. If Lincoln can sign a goal scorer in January, like a goal scorer, whether that be Joe Taylor, whether that be somebody, another and a striker, because I imagine that we might see Bailey Cadamarchi go back to Wednesday. So another striker that can come in and fill the number 9 shirt, maybe like a Nathan Lowe or like a Joe Taylor. I'd say 100%, because I think the back 9 that we've got, so goalkeeper, defenders, and midfielders,
sounds like quite a conservative formation, Jake.
Yeah. Well, I'm not playing a back 9. I think the 9 for the 2/3 that we've got, the back third and the midfield third, are top 6 worthy. I think that they could all, pretty much all of them, play for teams that want to get in the top 6.
Yeah,
but we've got like a league. This sounds really horrible. We've got like a League 2 front line at the minute, and that's what's letting us down. Like I think of games that we've had recently, chances where we've missed. Whereas if like I said to you at the start, we'd had a Joe Taylor, he takes them, and then we all of a sudden we're maybe 8 points better off. And do you know what I mean? So
I think you put the second half of last season's Lincoln City in this iteration of League One, and I think you're in the automatic promotion
yes,
places. Um, I think, yeah, that point that you've raised about kind of the areas up top, I think is probably, yeah, like you say, what's holding you back. And I think in that sense, January is going to hold the key, both in terms of retaining the likes of Ethan Rahan, but also making those final additions that are going to make all the difference. But I don't know about you, Jake. I've been actually a little bit underwhelmed by the standard of League One so far this season. I was expecting it to be better across the board than it's been.
yeah, I think a lot of people hyped it up to be the best League One ever.
I did.
I think what it is more competitive. I think that I think apart from a couple of years ago where you had Plymouth, Wednesday, and Ipswich completely run off with it,
Yeah.
I think the team the gap from probably second to 15th is just a lot closer. Therefore, it's
Well, other
more
than Birmingham City, because we're obviously going to. Yeah.
well. The league table suggests it might be Wycombe Wanderers at the minute, Gab. But I maybe don't expect it to finish that way. As much as I do love Phil Catchpole, I can't see it quite finishing that way. But yeah, no, I just think the gap has got smaller. Teams have got closer together, and I think that's helped with teams in the bottom half getting better budgets. So the likes, well, not the Wycombe didn't finish bottom half, but do you know what I mean? Wycombe have got a bigger budget. Bristol Rovers have got a bigger budget. Burton have had a bigger budget. I know they're absolutely rubbish at the minute, but that adds to the league, doesn't it? That drives the quality of players further up the division.
Yeah.
I think the playoff teams from last year aren't as good as well. Whereas you got Barnsley, Peterborough, Bolton. Bolton's a whole talking point. That it's a bit of a meltdown that everyone seems to have over Bolton at the minute. So I just think everyone's closer together. I don't think there are. I think there's one team that will run off, whereas 3 teams ran off a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So I think the standard's good. I don't think the standard I think it's League One standard. I think it's a decent level. I just think everyone's a lot closer together. So games are much more finer margins. I don't think you'll have many games between teams that are maybe top half of the playoffs to maybe bang on mid-table that are massively one-sided. I think you'll have a lot. Do you know what I mean? There'll be close games and there'll be fine margins. So yeah, I see where people come from saying that they're disappointed in the standard. I just think everyone's a lot more competitive, and competitive football, you know, games where it's an actual game rather than one team running away with it. It makes it look a little bit less quality, if that makes sense. I think it's because it's so even. Everyone goes, "Oh, it's rubbish." You know, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, hopefully Lincoln City can push on and get that top 6 spot, because I think lots of great work being done there, and I think it would be the least that that some of the people there deserve. So so best luck for the rest of the season, and look forward to catching up soon. Thanks for joining me this evening, Jake. Thanks to all of you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate League One podcast with a bit of a focus on Lincoln City, and we'll see you again next week.